begin with paragraph 53, chapter 21, that is page 762. So from that paragraph begins actually the knowledge of equanimity about formations. But let me tell you something before that. Now, a meditator or vipassana meditation goes through different stages of knowledge, vipassana knowledge. So the first knowledge he experiences is the knowledge of defining mind and matter, or the knowledge of discriminating mind and matter, or seeing mind and matter clearly. And after that knowledge, he gains the knowledge of seeing the causes of mind and matter. And after that, there is the contemplation, knowledge of comprehension. It is called knowledge of comprehension. And at that stage, he sees the common characteristic of phenomena, that is impermanence, suffering, and soullessness. And then after that, he reaches another stage where he sees arising and disappearance of whatever he observes. Going from that stage, he reaches another stage where only the dissolution, only the disappearing vividly appears to him, or he is able to comprehend the dissolution or disappearing more evidently. And after that, so there are two stages in the knowledge of arising and disappearing. The first stage is called immature stage, and the other stage is called mature stage. So, in between these two stages, there is another stage, not necessarily vipassana knowledge, but the impediments. So 10 impediments come to him during the immature stage of knowledge of rise and fall. So he surmounts them, or he decides that they are not the right path, and the practice of meditation is only the right path. So he practices again, and he reaches the second or mature stage of knowledge of rise and fall. And after that, he sees only the dissolution. And after that, he sees danger in the mental and physical phenomena which are rising and falling, or which are always disappearing. Then he sees what is called. Now it's a little difficult to be consistent. The translation of Pali words. In this book, it is said the fear, knowledge of fear, right? Knowledge that it is fearful. That comes after the knowledge of seeing dissolution. So when you see things dissolving before your eyes, then you see them as fearful. After seeing them as fearful, you get another kind of knowledge, which is seeing danger in them, or seeing fault in them. And then after that, you become dispassionate towards them. You don't want to be attached to them. You don't want to hold on to them. And then you want to get out of them. You want to get free from them. And then after that, the yogi practices again on the three characteristics of mental and physical phenomena. And after that, he reaches this stage, the stage of knowledge of equanimity about formations. And there is a very good simile given in paragraph 49. I think we should read that paragraph again. A man thought to catch a fish, it seemed, so he took a fishing net and cast it in the water. He put his hand into the mouth of the net under the water and seized a snake by the neck. He was glad, thinking, I had caught a fish. In the belief that he had caught a big fish, he lifted it up to see. When he saw 3 marks, he perceived that it was a snake, and he was terrified. He saw danger, felt dispassion or revulsion for what he had seized, and desired to be delivered from it. Contriving a means to deliverance, he unwrapped the coils from his hand, starting up the tip of its tail. Then he raised his arm, and when he had weakened the snake by swinging it 2 or 3 times round his head, he flung it away, crying, "Go, foul snake." Then quickly scrambling up onto dry land, he stood looking back whence he had come, thinking, "Goodness, I have been delivered from the jaws of a huge snake." So this is the simile. And then application of simile to the practice is given in paragraph 50. So after he wanted to get rid of it, then he had to find a means to get rid of it, and that is contemplating on mental and physical phenomena again as impermanent, suffering, and soulless. Then after that he reaches this stage. So paragraph 53. We have done this, but I want to begin from this again. So in paragraph 53 it is said, having thus discerned by knowledge of contemplation or reflection, that means reflection, recontemplation, that all formations are void, he again discerns voidness in the double logical relation. So he contemplates on formations of mental and physical phenomena in double logical relation. That is, this is void of self, and this is void of what belongs to self. And then next he discerns voidness in the quadruple logical relation. That means in 4 ways. There is no I in me, and it is not the property of another person, and another person has no I, no Atman, and what he thinks to be his Atman is not part of me, something like that. So this is called the 4 quadruple logical relation. And the text even here is very difficult to understand and peculiar. Then next he discerns voidness again in 6 modes. That is paragraph 55. And then next in how many modes? In 8 modes, paragraph 56. And then in 10 modes. And then in 12 modes. And then in 42 modes. The true full understanding as investigation and so on. So he contemplates on the formations of what we call voidness in different ways to thoroughly see the 3 characteristics of stand. Then paragraph 61. When he has discerned formation by attributing the 3 characteristics to them and seeing them as void in this way, he abandons both terror and delight. He becomes indifferent to them and neutral. He neither takes them as I nor as mine. He is like a man who has divorced his wife. Now, this description is important. This is the description of the knowledge of equanimity about formations. When a person has reached the knowledge of equanimity about formations, he abandons both terror and delight. He is not afraid of anything, and he is not attached to anything. His mind is always neutral. However attractive a thing may be, he doesn't see it as attractive, or however provocative it may be, he doesn't see it as provocative. and he becomes indifferent to them and neutral. He becomes indifferent to formations, indifferent to what he observes through his practice of meditation. Now, indifferent to them does not mean that he does not pay attention to them. He pays attention to them, but he has no fear about them, or he has no like or dislikes with regard to them. So that is what is meant by here. He becomes indifferent to them and becomes neutral. So, and he neither takes them as I or as mine. This is actually the explanation of being indifferent to them. If you take them as I or as mine, then you are not indifferent to them. You are biased. Say you take them to be you, or you take them to be your property. So when a person doesn't take them as I or as mine, then he is said to be indifferent to formations and neutral to formations. Then paragraph 63. When he knows and sees thus, his heart retreats, retracts, and recoils from the three kinds of becoming. The four kinds of generation, the 5 kinds of destiny, the 7 stations of consciousness, and the 9 abodes of being. His heart no longer goes out to them. That means he retracts from or recoils from all existence. Say, if he's a human being, he is not attached to human existence, and he is not attached to the other kinds of existence. So his heart retreats, retracts, and recoils. And then the simile is given: just as water drops retreat, retract, and recoil on a lotus leaf that slopes a little and do not spread out, so too his heart retreats, retracts, and recoils. And just as a fowl's feather or a shred of sinew thrown on a fire retreats, retracts, and recoils, and does not spread out, so too his heart retreats, retracts, and recoils from the 3 kinds of becoming, and so on. Either equanimity or repulsiveness is established. In this way, there arises in him what is called knowledge of equanimity about formations. This is the highest stage of vipassana knowledge. Now here it is said that his heart or his mind retreats, retracts, and recoils. So although his mind is on the formations, because if you practice vipassana meditation, formations are the objects you have to take. So it may be matter, or it may be mind, or different mental states and different matter. But his mind always retreats, retracts, and recoils. Now, in actual practice, this means your mind, or your consciousness or mind doesn't want to go to other objects. Now, formally, before a person reaches this stage, then there are distractions, and his mind goes out quite often, and then he has to bring it back, and so on. But when a yogi reaches this stage, his mind will not go out. Even if he deliberately sends his thought out, it will immediately come back. So his mind is so dispassionate towards things that whatever object he takes, he retreats from it. His mind retreats from it. So that is when a yogi reaches this stage of knowledge about equanimity of formations. Now, if this knowledge sees Nibbana, the state of peace, as peaceful, it rejects the occurrence of all formations and enters only into Nibbana. That means at this stage, if a yogi sees Nibbana, that it is peace, then it rejects the occurrence of all formations. That means the occurrence really means continuance of all formations, and enter into Nibbana. That means he becomes enlightened. if he does not see Nibbana as peaceful, it occurs again and again with formations as its object, like the sailor's crow. So at this point, a yogi may be practicing at this stage of knowledge. And if he is a gifted person, then he may reach enlightenment immediately or in a very short time. Sometimes he may not reach immediately, but he will be in this stage for a long time. Sometimes days or months maybe. So when his mind does not see Nibbana as peaceful, then it occurs again. It means this knowledge of equanimity about formation occurs again and again, with formations as its object, like the sailor's crow. And then the simile of the sailor's crow, that trader boarding ship, it seems they take with them what is called a land-finding crow. There were no readers or wireless or whatever, so they have to depend on a crow. So when the ship gets blown off its course by gales and goes adrift with no land in sight, then they release the land-finding crow. It takes off from the masthead. Yeah. And after exploring all the quarters, if it sees land, it flies straight in the direction of it. If not, it returns and alights on the masthead. So too, if knowledge of equanimity about formation sees Nibbana, the state of peace, as peaceful, it rejects the occurrence of all formations and enters only into Nibbana. That means becomes enlightened. If it does not see it, it occurs again and again with formations as its object. So a yogi may have to spend a considerably long time in that state of knowledge. Now, after discerning formations and the various modes, as though sifting flour on the edge of a tray, actually, you call it sifting? Sometimes it is sifting means letting some particles go through the holes. Is that sifting?
Yeah.
But here, the action is not letting particles go through the holes, but say, what do you call that? Making like this. You put the flour in the tray, and then you turn it round and round so that the grosser particles come up, and then the softer particles remain. Something like that.
That's sifting.
That's called sifting?
I think so.
That's another form of sifting, yeah. I mean, that's the most common, but that's also called sifting.
Yes, they're doing like that, so the flour becomes more and more subtle. Yeah. So sifting flour on the edge of a tray, as though cutting cotton from which the seeds are picked out, and after abandoning terror and delight, and the same thing repeated here, after abandoning terror and delight, and after becoming neutral in the investigation of formations. Now, do you notice the difference? On the other page, it says, he becomes indifferent to them. That means indifferent to formations. Here, not only to formations, but to investigation of formations. He doesn't want to investigate at all. He's indifferent to investigating them. So he still persists in the triple contemplation, but he still does it. And in doing this insight knowledge enters upon the state of a triple gateway to liberation, and it becomes a condition for the classification of noble persons into 7 kinds. And then the other explanations follow. Now, there is a lot of digression, because the author wants us to know many things about this knowledge of equanimity about formations, and so he described many things here. So much that we lose track of the real practice. So after reaching this stage is the equanimity about formation, right? So let us go to page 772. and then we'll come back to the other paragraph later. Now, insight leading to emergence of the path. Paragraph 83. Now, when this clansman has reached equanimity about formations thus, his insight has reached its culmination and leads to emergence. To emergence really means to enlightenment, to the path. Insight that has reached culmination, or insight leading to emergence, are names for the three kinds of knowledge, beginning with equanimity about formations, that is, equanimity about formations, and then conformity, and then change of lineage. It has reached its culmination because it has reached the culminating final stage. This is a definition in Pali of the word. It is called leading to emergence because it goes towards emergence. The path is called emergence because it emerges externally from the objective basis, interpreted as a sign, and also internally from occurrence of defilements. Now, the path, Magga, is called emergence. It is called emergence, or in Pali Votana, because it emerges externally from the objective basis, interpreted as a sign. Now, I am not so happy with the translation interpretation. Actually, it means contemplation on the objects of vipassana. The Pali word uses a nivesa, and so he translated as interpreting. It may mean quite a different thing. So, what it means here is just contemplating on the formations, contemplating on them as impermanent and so on. Now, externally from the objective basis interpreted as a sign, and also internally from occurrence of defilements means continuance of defilements. It goes to that. Thus, it leads to, not it leads to. It goes to that. Thus, it is called leading to emergence. So the sentence would read like that. It goes to that. Thus, it is called leading to emergence. The meaning is that it joins with the path. So after it, there will come the path consciousness. So the emergence, insight leading to emergence, is the common name of three vipassana knowledges. The first is equanimity about formations, and then after that, the knowledge of conformity, and after that, the knowledge of change of lineage. We will come to them later. So these three are called insight leading to emergence of the path. And then there are other explanations. After this, what happens next? So let us go to paragraph 128. As he repeats, develops and cultivates that equanimity about formations, his faith becomes more resolute. Maybe that means more firm, more established. His energy better exerted. His mindfulness better established. His mind better concentrated. While his equanimity about formations grows more refined. So he practices meditation, he goes on practicing meditation, and so his faculties become more developed. His faith becomes more established and so on. Now, he thinks, now the path will arise, equanimity about and so on. Here, the translation should read like this. When it should be said, now the path will arise, not he thinks. It is a Pali idiom, and most authors misunderstood this Pali idiom. I don't know why. Many translators missed the point of this Pali idiom. Now, the yogi does not think that now the path will arise. He doesn't know that the path will arise. he doesn't know when the path will arise. When the path will arise means when he will get enlightenment. So the moment of enlightenment is what is called path here. So he does not know that the path will arise at this moment or at any given moment. The Pali idiom means that when the path is about to arise. So he is practicing meditation, and his meditation or his knowledge becomes more and more mature. And so when it is the time for the path to arise, when the path is about to arise, then what happens? Equanimity about formations after comprehending formations as impermanent or as painful or as not self sinks into the life continuum. Now, he is practicing meditation, and so his mind is on the formations, so seeing the formations as impermanent and so on. Then what happens? When path is about to arise, equanimity about formations after comprehending formations as impermanent and so on sinks into life continuum. That means, you know life continuum. It is bhavanga. So bhavanga arises at that time. When bhavanga arises, the equanimity about formations disappear. Next to life continuum, immediately after life continuum, mind-door adverting arises. Now manodvara vajana arises at that moment, making formations its object, taking formations as object, and taking them as impermanent, painful, not self, according to the way taken by equanimity about formations. Then next to the functional adverting consciousness, that means next to manodvara vajana, mind-door adverting consciousness, that arose displacing life continuum. That means the adverting consciousness arises displacing the life continuum. The first impulsion consciousness arises. So the first jhana moment arises, making formations as object in the same way, maintaining the continuity of consciousness. And that means continuity of the same kind of consciousness, because there is always a continuity of consciousness. One consciousness is followed by another consciousness. So actually there is no gap or whatever between two moments of consciousness. But here, continuity of consciousness means continuity of the same kind of consciousness. Now, first, say there is the vipassana thought moments, right? And then there is bhavanga, life continuum, because the path is about to arise. After life continuum, what? Mind-door adverting. After mind-door adverting, what? Impulsions or jhana moment. And not one jhana moment, how many? It will altogether be 7. But first, there are 4 moments of jhanas. Now you will see them. This is called the preliminary work. So the first moment of jhana. The first jhana moment is called preliminary work. Next to that is second impulsion consciousness arises, making formations its object in the same way. This is called the access. So preliminary, 1 moment, access, 1 moment. Next to that, a third impulsion consciousness also arises, making formations its object in the same way. This is called conformity. Now that is a third. These are their individual names, but it is admissible to call all 3 impulsions repetition or preliminary work or access or conformity indiscriminately. So they can be called by any name. And then another digression. Conformity to what? Because after this will come the Gotrabu change of lineage, which is described in the next chapter. So we'll stop there, here. So now you're going to get path, but not yet. We have not yet reached path. So here, the four moments of impulsions, or the four moments of jhana. The first one is what? Preliminary, and the second, access, and the third, conformity. Only three. But another moment is the change of lineage. All these three here take the formations as object. It will be different when it reaches the next moment, which is Kotrabu, change of lineage. So the change of lineage consciousness will take Nibbana as object. But these three take formations or mind and matter as object. Okay. So this is the sequence of real practice. So a person reaches the knowledge of equanimity about formations, and he practices it again and again, and when it becomes matured, then there will arise path consciousness. Before the path consciousness, there is a series of moments of consciousness. The first is a series of vipassana moments, and then there is the bhavanga, and then bhavanga is followed by mind door adverting, and mind door adverting is followed by first 4 moments of jhana. They belong to Kama Vajra Jhana. So three have already been mentioned, and the last one will be mentioned later. Okay, so after seeing, knowing the sequence, we'll go back to page 766, the triple gateway to liberation. It enters upon the state of the triple gateway to liberation now with the predominance of one of the 3 faculties, according as the contemplation occurs in one of the 3 ways, and so on. Now, the knowledge of equanimity about formations is called the gateway to liberation, the gateway to Magga. For it is the 3 contemplations that are called the 3 gateways to liberation, according as it is said. So there are 3 kinds of gateways to liberation. 1. The seeing of all formations as limited and circumscribed, and to the entering of consciousness into the signless element. So signless is 1. 2. To the stirring up of the mind with respect to all formations, and to the entering of consciousness into the desireless element. That is 2nd. And to the seeing of all things as alien, and to the entering of consciousness into the voidness element. So this is voidness. These 3 gateways to liberation led to the outlet from the world. So these are called gateway to liberation. Actually, this is a contemplation. Contemplation as impermanent, contemplation as painful, and contemplation as no self. So they are given here different names as signless, desireless, and voidness. Here, as limited and circumscribed means both as limited by rise and fall, and as circumscribed by them. For contemplation of impermanence limits them thus. Formations do not exist previous to their rise. So they do not exist before they arise. And in seeking their destiny, actually I would say in seeking their course, C-O-U-R-S-E, the Pali word gati can mean a destiny, or it is just its course. I think here course is better. So in seeking their course, sees them as circumscribed, thus they do not go beyond fall, they vanish there. So when he sees the formations, he sees this way. They do not exist before they come into being, and after disappearing, they are nowhere, something like that. They do not go beyond fall, and they vanish there. To the stirring up of the mind, it's an explanation of that phrase, by giving consciousness a sense of urgency, for which the contemplation of pain consciousness acquires a sense of urgency with respect to formations, and to seeing as alien, to contemplate them as not self, thus not I, not mine. So these 3 clauses should be understood to express the contemplations of impermanence and so on. Hence, in the answer to the next question asked in the Patisambhida, it is said when he brings them to mind as impermanent, formations appear as liable to destruction. When he brings them to mind as painful, that means when he contemplates on them as painful, formations appear as terror. When he brings them to mind as not self, formations appear as void. Now, what are the liberations to which these contemplations are the gateways? They are these three, namely the signless, the desireless, and void. They come again and again. Now, we have to see that there are the gateways, and there are the deliverance. So you enter through a gateway and you reach a particular deliverance. These three deliverance are also named signless, desireless, and void. Now, what is deliverance? It is explained as the path, right? So the path is deliverance. When one who has great resolution brings formations to mind as impermanent, he acquires the signless liberation. When one who has great tranquility brings them to mind as painful, he acquires the desireless liberation. When one who has great wisdom brings them to mind as not self, he acquires the void liberation. This is from Visuddhimagga. Now, the translation is not that I would like it to be. The meaning is that a person who contemplates formations as impermanent becomes firm in his resolution. Resolution means saddha, faith. So a person who contemplates on the formations as impermanent makes his faith or confidence grow or more. That is what is meant here. Because first, a person practices meditation with faith, with the something like trust of the teacher. The teacher said, or the Buddha said, that things are impermanent and so on. So when he first practiced meditation, he just practiced on faith. He just take them on faith. Since the Buddha has said that these are impermanent, they will be impermanent. But he has not seen it himself. And now, through the practice of meditation, he sees them himself. And so, when he sees them himself, he gains more faith, more confidence in the Buddha. But what the Buddha said was very true. The Buddha said that they are impermanent. Now I am seeing them myself, that they are really impermanent and so on. So, when he practices, contemplates on the impermanence of things, that means when he really sees the impermanence of things, his faith in the Buddha increases. So that is what is meant here. When one has, the one who has great tranquility brings them to mind as painful. Here also, if a yogi contemplates formations as painful, then he increases his, what was that? Great tranquility, passaddhi. It's a little difficult to understand. So you contemplate on the painfulness of things, and then you get tranquility. Yeah? When you concentrate on the painfulness of things, how do you get tranquility? So it is explained in the Tika, the sub-commentary, that when you contemplate on things as painful, you also contemplate on the opposite of what is painful. Say, only contemplate on Nibbana as happiness. So when you contemplate on the formations as painful and on its opposite as happy, then you get what is called tranquility. So when a person brings the formations to mind as painful, then he increases his tranquility. And when a person brings to mind as not self, then he develops his wisdom. He makes his wisdom grow. So it is not the other way. Not because he has great resolution does he contemplate on impermanence of things. But because he contemplates on impermanence of things, he gets more faith or more confidence. Because he contemplates on painfulness of things, so he gets more tranquility. Because he contemplates on no self nature of things, he gets more understanding or more wisdom. So that is what is meant here. Let me see. We can refer to paragraph 76. So there the translation reads, when he brings formation to mind as impermanent, the faith faculty is in excess in him, right? So that is the correct meaning to understand. So when he brings formations to mind as impermanent, then the faith faculty becomes much in him. With the faith faculty in excess equals supremacy and so on. So that is how to understand this passage. And then paragraph 71, and here the signless liberation should be understood. The signless liberation should be understood as the noble path that has occurred by making Nibbana its object through the signless aspect. So Nibbana has also these aspects, signless, desireless and voidness. So when the path takes Nibbana as its object through the signless aspect, then it is called signless liberation, signless path. For that path is signless owing to the signless element having arisen. That is not so. What is meant here is that path is signless owing to its occurring on the signless element. Signless element means signless Nibbana here. Because it takes signless Nibbana as object, it is called signless. Not because the signless element has arisen. Because Nibbana cannot be said to have arisen or existing or has gone out of existence. So Nibbana is eternal. So it has no beginning, no end. So here, what is meant is that path is signless owing to its occurring on the signless element. Simply it means because it takes Nibbana, signless Nibbana as object, it is called signless. In the same way, the path that has occurred by making Nibbana its object through the desireless aspect is desireless, and the path that has occurred by making Nibbana its object through the void aspect is void. It is just explanation of how the deliverance of path gets names as signless liberation, desireless liberation, and void liberation. But when you are actually practicing meditation, you won't bother about these names. Maybe these are for scholars. Or later on you may want to find out what liberation did I get or something like that. But in actual practice they won't come to your mind. But it is said in the Abhidhamma, and then he poses a question and problem here. In Abhidhamma, signless is not mentioned. In the first book of Abhidhamma, signless is not mentioned. And so only two are mentioned there. But the answer is this refers to the way in which insight arrives at the path and is expressed literally. Now, what this means is, this refers to the way in which the name of path comes from, literally. Now, path gets named as, say, signless or desireless or void. Now, how does path get these names? So, there must be a cause, or there must be a source for these names. Why path is called signless? white part is called desireless and so on. And that depends upon how the